If I wasn't
Go.
upstairs in my closet, for real, they would be up my butt too. Welcome to Mom Mentality, your virtual village of support. I'm Jessica Campbell, your family wellness coach, and I am committed to helping you prioritize your and your family's well-being. This podcast will be like your favorite ladies group chat come to life. We'll share the ups and downs of life for moms just like you, get real advice from coaches and experts, and I'll pop in with my own stories and tips on everyday challenges to the big questions. Whether you're juggling work from home, balancing adult life with parenthood, tackling ADHD, yours or your kids, or just trying to catch a breath, Mom Mentality is your spot. Let's start off with you just telling us about yourself so we know who you are.
Perfect. Well, my name's Kat. I have been in digital marketing for about 10 years, whether that was with an agency or on my own. So I ran my own social media agency, LOL, it was just me, let's be honest. So I ran social media for people for different clients for a couple of years, and then I started working for another agency and was there for a while. I am now a full-time copywriter for a different marketing agency. So I have been in the online space for some time. Personally, I have been married for 5 years. I've got two little ones. My oldest just turned 4 on December 1st, and my youngest is going to be 2 at the end of February. So it is a wild season, and there they are, bust through the door as they speak. Yeah, so life is busy. I'm a stay-at-home, full-time, working, full-time mom, and we're also homeschooling our oldest. So it's fun. It's fun and busy. It's good.
We are in the same boat. I am working full time and I am homeschooling my oldest too. So I know that struggle. It's going to be a good conversation.
Yeah.
I know you said you were working like before kids. What inspired you to work on your own business as a mom?
Mm-hmm.
Or like what was like a moment that pushed you into that even in motherhood?
So I did it before, and it was kind of like a fun side hustle because I was single and I didn't have kids and I had all this time, and I was like, what am I gonna do? I'll keep working. And so I did that, and then once I got married, I was like, I don't want to do this. So I didn't. I stopped, and I really had no idea what I was doing. My background is in pre-law, so like that doesn't help business. And so I stopped doing that, and that was right before COVID, which I feel like is a very clear like time indicator for everyone.
Yes.
It's just like, oh, okay.
It's like the new BC AD.
Yes,
It's like
exactly.
pre-COVID, after COVID.
It really is. And so that was pre-COVID. And then so I stopped doing that. We had just got married that previous September. And I was at a company and I'd been there for 3.5 years at that point, and things were, as far as I knew, were very steady. And I went on maternity leave with my second. So had my first, went back to work, had my second, went back to work, and then 6 weeks later was laid off with like no warning, nothing, no severance. Like it was the weirdest phone call because my boss texted me, he's like, hey, can I call you really quick? And I was like, yeah, of course. And that was like very common for like our work
Right.
culture. It was a very
Mhm.
small agency. And he's like, yeah, we're gonna have to let you go. And I was like, I'm sorry. What?
Excuse
That
me.
is not where I thought we were going here. Like it was a conversation that's usually about like bonuses,
Right.
within like our calendar timeline. We just had a big event. So it went from like, oh, we'll be getting a bonus on this phone call to like, you no longer have a job in 2 weeks. And so at that point, my daughter was 2.5 and 4 or 5 months old. And I was like, I'm not doing daycare. Like nothing against daycare. It's not for me.
Right.
I love how our mornings go. I love being a stay-at-home working mom. Like I'm not willing to give that up. So I'm going to do whatever the heck it takes to figure that out. And so I started applying for other jobs, and that just takes forever. And to find a job
Mhm.
that like is great for kids to be around and to be home is, a needle in a haystack type thing. And so in the meantime, I was like, well, I'm going to keep applying for jobs and I'm going to start my own business. So I did. And I had no idea what I was doing because like I said earlier, I am pre-law. I had no idea about the business side of things and how to run a business. Like I can write you content, I can send you
Right.
your emails, but when it comes down to like all that goes into a business, I was like, I got nothing.
Right.
That was kind of my turning point. I was like, I've got to figure this out, and I'm
Right.
gonna do
It's kind
whatever
of
it
like
takes.
necessity. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. It
that.
wasn't. We didn't have money for me to start my own business. We didn't have time for me to start my own business. Like it wasn't like we had just like, oh, this is the time. This is perfect. It was like, okay, our back's against the wall, and we got a mortgage to pay in 2 weeks, and the check that paid it is now gone.
Right.
So that's how we got started.
Wow. That's a lot. And that's heavy and scary. It's like you think you're going to
Terrifying.
get a bonus, but instead it's like, not only are you not getting a bonus, we're actually going to take away the money that you
The
do
whole
receive
thing.
regularly. It's fine. It's
It's fine. You'll
fine.
be fine, right? I was like,
Yeah. I
okay.
know you had a baby, but don't even worry about it. And then postpartum, to be so newly postpartum
Oh my
and,
gosh.
like, losing your money,
Put a
I can
number on the
only
emotions.
imagine. Yes,
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
terrible. I would go into a spiral, like, for real, I would go into a spiral.
My spirals are like freak out and then figure it out.
Right, same.
So it's like, okay, this is terrifying. Now what? And since then, I've kind of had this phrase of like, one income is too close to no income. And so now I want to make sure that I have at all times more than one source of income, because what I thought was a very stable job, like I would have been there for years, was gone in a second. And that just reminded me of like how replaceable we are to people who, like, even in a family culture style employer, like at the end of the day, you're just a number. Like
Right,
they don't care.
as
Yeah.
much as you can like each other, they're not your family. Like, your
Right.
family is your family, and they
Yes.
prove that kind of stuff time and time again in the work industry.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So I completely get that, because it's true. It's like when they say, like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's the same concept. Like, if you only have
Exactly.
one job, then what do you do?
Then what?
Yeah.
Then what? And I know that's how a lot of people, it works for a lot of people and a lot of families. And there's a lot of stay-at-home moms that are probably listening to this, and they rely solely on their husband's income, which is awesome. In the
Right.
sense of like, I love that you can be a stay-at-home mom and do that, and that your husband's job to provide. And then it's just really scary when your main paycheck is gone. Because in our family, my husband's job is very fluid. He is a professional baseball coach. And so there's seasons where it's really packed, and then there's seasons where it's not as packed. And so my job has always been the one that pays the mortgage. And so, yeah, it was definitely a very scary, like, okay, now what?
Right. And it also, I think that all depends on, like, how prepared you are too, because sometimes you think you've got things set up, but you don't even realize the systems you don't have in place. So then if you do lose that income and you're like, screwed, essentially, like, if you're not prepared, a lot of people who do have husbands maybe that are on the road, I've seen a lot of people that their husbands are traveling 6 months out of the year because they make such good money. That's one of my thoughts. Like, I just hope that with that, you're also preparing for if something were to happen, because it's very easy to get caught up in what it looks like now and not be prepared for later. And I had to learn that later in life. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I totally understand where you're coming from.
So is there a particular challenge, or like you said, you didn't know how to run a business? Was there anything that came up that made you really second guess if that was the right move?
I wouldn't say I second guessed it. I kind of took what I am passionate about and what I know how to do. And I was like, okay, how do I make this a better business? How do I do this more consistently? And so for me, I just was thinking like, okay, I know how to write for people, and I could go onto like Fiverr or like all of those like freelancing systems to try to find more work. But it's really hard to get started in one of those places when you have no control of like where you land. And so I looked at all the different options, and I looked at going back to school for, a digital marketing degree, because again, my background doesn't qualify me. My educational background doesn't qualify me for a lot of these jobs that I'm actually qualified for based off of work experience that I did in this previous agency. And so I was, talking to my husband. I was like, okay, maybe I go back to school, or like with what money, like what are my options? I kind of took to YouTube, and I was like, okay, how can I start learning all of this? And the biggest holdup was like, when am I going to do all this? When am I going to do this? How do I learn all of this? I think to answer your question is the biggest holdup for me was like, how do I even get started? And when am I going to find time to get this done? And knowing that it can take a long time for a business to take off, that I was like, I still need to apply for jobs and find another full-time job, because most times your first year in business isn't going to be successful. Yeah.
Sometimes it's 5. So it's like, how do you sit tight for that long?
For 5 years with 2 kids and organic fruit being like $1 million a bag. Like it doesn't add up. You know what I mean? So it was very much like, okay, there's a lot of reasons here for us not to do this, but there's more reasons when I look ahead as to like why it was worth it to sit down, to do the research, to figure out like what is our long-term goal, and how do we take steps today to get to where we want to be in 5 years, to get to that 10-year goal. Because so often look at that big picture and it can be very overwhelming. Like, I can't do that. It's like, well, no, I can't start tomorrow and be where I want to be in 10 years. But I look back at, now it's been over a year since I got started. I'm like so much further ahead than I thought I could be within a year of being a business owner. And like we were just talking about how your first year in business is usually not profitable and ended up being a 5-figure year, just under 5 figures in my first year, which is wild to start a business and have it take off within a year. It just blows my mind.
Yeah. My business coach is always saying that people tend to overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in even 30 days or 90 days. And like long term, we tend to overestimate so much of what we can do. And we don't end up getting there because we severely underestimate what we can do in such a short amount of time, that we have these huge dreams, but we don't do the short term things because we underestimate it. And so it just becomes that cycle of like inability to actually reach the goal because we're not consistent in that. So it is really interesting that you even bring that up, that it just looks so much different than you expected it to in that time. That kind of led me into this next question, because you were saying there were a lot of reasons not to. So in that time, you were worried about time and, the planning, like the logistics of how you were going to do it. Now, knowing what you know now and looking back, are there reasons that you can see now that you're like, man, that was even crazy I even did it, because there was all these things stacked against me and now here I am?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely crazy that we did it. It's crazy I was able to convince my husband that I should do this. Like, there's probably even more than I am aware of. But the biggest one, so you can learn everything online, right? Everything is out there. I was like, I kind of wanted to take a shortcut, to be completely honest. And I was like, okay, I found a course. Don't we all? Like, I saw a saying that was like, you could walk to get groceries, but I sure as heck like to get in the car and drive. Like, if you have to, you could walk there to get them. But I'm going to get in my car. I'm going to save some time and get there faster. I saw this course and I was like, hey, babe, I see this thing. I was talking to my husband and I was like, I think I want to try this. And he looked at me and he said, what? I was like, it's a course that's going to teach me about digital marketing and running my own business. It's like a 2-for-1. But I looked up like digital marketing degrees and those cost thousands. And this only costs 500. And so we talked about it for a couple days and he was like, you know what? At the end of the day, it's only $500, which I was shocked for him to say. Like, $500 is a lot of money, especially after losing my job. But for him to have that belief in me was like, okay, well, now I got to make sure that I make this thing happen. Right. So I would say that was probably the biggest reason of why we shouldn't have done it was, again, we didn't have $500 to spend. Like, we just didn't have it. Like, every penny, we were going to Trader Joe's to get meat. And I remember like looking at the turkey meat and finding the very cheapest one that didn't, like, okay, this one is $16.02, and this one is $15.98. Like, let me grab that one, right? So it was like, we were doing that at the grocery store. I'm like, okay, well, we used to eat strawberries, so we'll stop eating the strawberries and just get them for the girls, right? To like, go spend $500 on this. I believe you can do it. Learn all you can, and we'll take those skills. So money was probably my biggest one of why I shouldn't have gotten started. And the fact that like I am still nursing around the clock, it feels like. And I was up all night, right? Like, I had a young baby. Like, do, but also don't, should I have started business when I was a couple months postpartum and all of that? Yeah, I don't know. But hey, it worked, right? Like, I just don't think there's ever going to be a perfect time or the stars align. And faith is a big part of our life. And so we just definitely prayed about like what this could mean for our family and, trusting that like, okay, I could take this education and I could either use it to grow my skills as a copywriter, grow a full business. I mean, learn so many different styles of skills like website design and development. And there was just so much packed into it where I was like, okay, I know that what's in this course, I know I'll make my money back from it. And so that's kind of what we did. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And within 5 weeks, I was able to take the course and then make my first sale based off of what I had learned. And so my husband was like, oh, okay. So took about 5 weeks for like me to get into that profitable space. And then from there, it was just kind of this, okay, how do we work this in? And I'd still applied for jobs. And one I'd applied for, months previously had finally gotten back to me. And so in January, I write for a nonprofit digital marketing agency. I write for a bunch of different nonprofits. So now I'm running a business, working full-time, home full-time, which is its own kind of job.
Yeah.
It's not for the weak, man. 4 o'clock with these kiddos is like, how long till bedtime? You know what I mean? Right. So I think, I just think stay-at-home moms of like, it is hard to be home with your kids as much as you love them. It can just be really hard to never have a break from your kids.
Oh yeah.
And that's also one of the reasons like why I should have never started this, and the exact reason I did.
Right.
We want to spend all of our time with our kids and be as present with them as possible. But in starting a business, it gave me a creative outlet. It gave me like adult conversations like this one. You know,
Yeah.
I've met some incredible people, and one of my best friends, I would say, through digital marketing and through this space. And so there's a million reasons why I shouldn't have started. We didn't have the time, we didn't have the money. I don't even think I had a brain, like mom brain, you know? And so we're like, we're gonna figure this out and make it happen. So
Right.
yeah, I would say that was why
Yeah.
I was hesitant to start.
Yeah.
And looking
Awesome.
back is like, how did we make it through? So
Right. Right. But it's also really beautiful to see, like, if it had not worked out, like the huge hit your family could have taken, and how beautifully it turned out to now and
yeah.
where you're at, and being able to write for nonprofits. And like, I can imagine how fulfilling that work must be, even though you say, you said you loved your old job, but like being able to write in that space, I imagine, is really fulfilling. And
Yeah,
so,
it is.
yeah, it's just a beautiful, like, turning of the chapters.
Yes. Yeah, it was a really hard year. And now it's like, I mean, still hard, toddlers, right? But professionally, it's been really cool to look back on just like my own growth as a writer and as a business owner. And kind of like we were talking about a few minutes ago, right? Of like, you can't do everything in a year, but you definitely can do something. And so to look back at where I was a year ago versus now, and to see the growth and to like be proud of something I've created and something I've done as someone who, like, I would have never in a million years considered myself an entrepreneur. Like, I just wouldn't. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I do fit into that lifestyle. And I'm more of a like solopreneur. Like, I'm not trying to build this giant enterprise. Like, I'm not trying to build a massive, I don't want to have a bunch of people working for me. I don't want to, like, no, I'm a solopreneur. I work when I can. I work when it works for our family. I make money in doing so. And it works for our lifestyle. Like, my job works for us, not the other way around, if that makes sense. You know?
Absolutely.
So
100%. Like when they say you want your money to work for you, it's like the same concept. Like, you be a slave to your job should be working for you, and the income, and work smart, not hard, that whole thing, like,
yes,
it makes a lot of sense. From here, we get to get into kind of the juicy stuff. How do you deal with, as you're working full time and wearing all the hats, how do you deal with the unpredictability of business and home life when you're working? Are there any daily challenges that kind of stand out for you having little ones at home? Young kids is extremely hard. I know it is for me. So
for sure.
can you speak to that?
Yeah, no, I would love to. I think the unexpected challenges is motherhood. It's just an unexpected whirlwind. Like, you wake up like, I got this, and you're next year like, don't got this. Don't got this. Don't know what's happening. So for me, truthfully, I wake up at 4:30 a.m. every day. And I will work on a side business, the one I've started, until my kids wake up. And then after that, I'm pretty much like, I'll get into my DMs throughout the day. Every now and then I'll maybe post a story, but then I won't really respond until like end of day, till the girls are asleep, and then I'll start working on them again. So I try to find out what works for me. I am most creative in the morning, and so that's why I wake up early to build my business in the morning. And then I'm working full time for my other job, my full time, traditional job, I guess you could say, 40 hours a week during the day. And then we homeschool our kids, like I said. And so it's definitely taken some time to figure out like how to do it, and how to do it. I'm not going to say well, I'm just going to say like how to do it all to the best of my ability. Right. And know that there's grace for every season. Even this, like, we had the scheduled podcast, and we have kids banging down the door asking me to open up their snack. Like, Dad's down the hall, go there. So I think
dads don't count though, right? Dad doesn't count.
And I'm also just very transparent in spaces of like, whether it's on my social media or on work, like, hey, I've got kids, I'm a mom, and that's my priority. That's why I do what I do, and you're probably going to hear them, and that's okay. And I think that just makes me more relatable. Like, hopefully it just makes it like, oh, she's just a mom. Like, I'm not some professional person in like aesthetic house that's always clean. Like, no, my bed's not made. And there's, our dishwasher's broken, so there's dishes in the sink, and so we just do what we can with the day that we have, and find out what works for us. So very practically, it's, I get up at 4:30, my coffee goes off at 4:27, and so I have my coffee ready to go. And I look forward to that cup of coffee around 7 p.m. the night before. It'll be so great. And I'll get my chair, and I'll grab my blanket, and I'll light the candle, and right now we have a Christmas tree in our room, so it's extra exciting. So turn that on. It really is, and so like I said, whether it's learning or writing an email or creating some posts for the week, I batch create a lot of my content. I think that is like the most underrated practical tip of like how to run a
Right.
business as a mom is to batch create your content. So today, like another very practical example is I created batch B-roll for the whole week. And so that looked like me taking my tripod and wearing 4 different outfits in the span of 5 minutes to record 15 different 30-second videos.
Right.
So that way tomorrow I'll sit in the same chair and I will edit out all my hooks and my captions and I'll build all of my videos for the week tomorrow morning, so just finding out how
Right.
to create consistency within my business, so then I time block. I have a very tiny cube. It's a productivity cube and it's like a 12-sided cube. And I will play with that thing because it helps with my ADHD. And I will just say, like, okay, for the next 35 minutes, I'm going to work on this email for this client and I can't do anything else until that's done. And for whatever
Right.
reason, this little blue ball really helps, so like that's one thing. And
I was gonna say I have ADHD too, and so it's really hard for me to batch because I either want to
mhm.
post it all at the same time
Oh my
or
gosh,
I
I
lose interest in it.
know.
So I've learned to like just do a few like at a time. But I realize I can get in better with the B-roll, and I have no
hmm
shame in telling somebody to just record for me. So like we were
Yeah.
at the park over the weekend and my sister was here and I was like,
Oh
take this and
yeah.
record some B-roll. And she's like,
Like
okay.
that.
And I'm like, I have no problem. So I tell my husband,
Like,
anytime we go somewhere, get me some B-roll. We have like a shared Apple album and
there
I'm
you
like,
go. Yes.
content dump, put the stuff in there. So
Yes.
we both have content. And it works.
It
It
works.
is
It
hard
does.
for me like
hmm
to batch my stuff because I also am like too lazy to change my clothes. But then I'm like, I don't care. Like I'm in the same sweatshirt. I have 3 sweatshirts, so I'm probably gonna be in it anyway. So it's fine. Speaking to the mom thing of like kids, hearing them in the background or whatever, if you listen real close to my intro, you can hear a little child
I
scream.
love it.
And I was like, I was gonna re-edit it, and then I was like, meh,
Nope.
you know what? I got kids. They were in the like they weren't even near me. They were in the living room, and you can hear
Yes.
like in the
I love
background.
it. No, that makes it just so real. Yeah, I
It's a
mean, for
mom
the
podcast. What are you gonna
it's
do,
a
right?
mom podcast. I'm sure there's kids crying right now as we're talking, and you're like, shh. So,
Right? It's fine.
but
You're
what
fine.
I did, like, because I don't like, I wear sweats 99% of the time. Like, I
Yes.
work from home. I'm a mom.
Mhm.
I'm home. I'm in sweats, and so I put jeans on. I don't like to be in jeans, so I started with jeans and a top, and then I changed my top into a more comfortable top, and then with the more comfortable top, I put like a cardigan on over it. So then I just like worked
Right.
myself back into sweats instead of starting with sweats to get to jeans because that'll never happen. So
Right.
if you're like me, start with the jeans, add 2 different sweaters on, don't
Oh,
overthink it.
mine's shoes. If I know I've got to do something, I love making all of my appointments for like first thing in the morning, like kids appointments, anything. Because then
Yeah,
when I come home, if I do not take my shoes off, I'm good. I'm golden. I can get so much work done if I keep my shoes on. Soon as the
fascinating.
shoes come off, I'm like done. I'm done.
Oh, that is fascinating. Mine is
Yeah.
definitely jeans. Cannot, I was like, oh, I feel productive. I'm not even doing anything. I have jeans on. It's like a
I
whole,
feel so fancy.
maybe I should wear jeans to work on a Tuesday. How would that make me respond?
Right.
Might try it. So,
Story of my life. Everything
um,
I want is casual. I'm like, I
yes.
want my whole business to be related on like just being casual and looking like a hobo because I'm a mom and I
Because
don't
that's
care
just
to
how
get
we
dressed up.
are. Yeah. And then on terms of the homeschool side, so practically we do morning bins and I reset those every Saturday and I make sure, whatever I need for Thursday is already there or at least in the house on
Mhm.
Saturday. So I'm not like Thursday morning, like, oh no, I need X, Y, and Z. Like it's either in her
Right.
basket or it wouldn't have made sense to put in the basket because it's frozen peas. So as much as I'm like, okay, I don't want to do it. And yesterday we set it for Christmas, so I didn't do it. So after we record this, I have to go do the basket.
Make
And I'm
some
like,
bins. Yeah.
I don't want to. But I know on Wednesday morning, I'll be like, okay, that was worth it. So,
Right.
we go grocery shopping on every Thursday and we have Costco pizza for dinner. Like just little things to where it's like it's routine based. A lot of pre-planning. I love leftovers. Those are
I'm a
really
big fan
helpful.
of making a big old thing of soup and then having that for like basically every meal for like the next
hmm
day and a half.
Yeah,
That's just
absolutely.
me though. My kids won't eat a lot of stuff, so I kind of have to
Yeah.
always have chicken nuggets on hand, basically.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. No, I feel that. So yeah, I think just finding what works for you and like I'm a 4:30 to a.m. Like that's my time. I feel so creative. Last night I was like, I'm gonna create some reels. No, I'm gonna go to bed. My brain couldn't compute the idea of like how to do this, you know? And I have a guide out right now that's like all on, it's called like Journey to the Manger, and it's all about like just celebrating Christmas in a very way that's like calm and it's not high strung and high stress. And so like prepping to get that out too was just more of like, okay, what's already on hand at home that I can use to be intentional with what we have. So it's like, even in the midst of the Christmas and holiday season, right? It's like finding those rhythms, I think, is just the biggest thing that like works well for you and your family and is intentionally with what you want it to be about. Not like I'm thrown into the season, but even in a season, if you're thrown into a season, you can still be intentional and reset it to where you like want it to be, slowly or quickly, you know, up to you, but just making sure you're taking those steps to get to where you want to be at the end of the day.
Right. And I think also like defining what you think as successful, especially in the holidays. And I've talked about this in some of my other podcasts, but just being able to decide what that looks like for you and not what it looks like for everybody else, which really helps me kind of, it's a perfect place to go into the next question, because I wanted to discuss, there's so much stigma around working moms or stay-at-home moms. And there's always that back and forth of, you know, what the right or the proper balance is. What kind of stigma or criticism, if any, have you run into in that space of like, especially being a stay-at-home and work-at-home mom? I think there's like a different balance there, because you could be in just a stay-at-home mom group or whatever, where they're like, oh, I would never go to work and leave, you know, send my baby to daycare or whatever. Or being a work-at-home mom who's like, I could never be at home with my kids all day, you know? How have you seen that show up?
I feel like I honestly have more of it on myself of like, oh, I should be more present and I shouldn't be working, or I should be, you know, more hands-on with my kids, or I should, you know, so I feel like I have that more. Like maybe if I sent my kids to daycare, then I wouldn't be as frustrated at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Because I just picked them up. So I feel like I struggle with that more in terms of like a personal pressure than I do outside. So my mom was a working mom. My dad passed away when I was really young. And so she was it, right? So she was our provider. She worked and she had to care for us. So from my family, we're all working moms. My mom's working mom. My sister's a working mom. And then my husband, his mom was able to stay at home and did the homeschool. And she fully supports my business. She fully supports me homeschooling, and she fully supports me working as well. So from our family, I feel like I've been really, really blessed to not have people criticize one way or the other. My family still doesn't think like digital products is even real. I'm like, I don't get it. I'm like, well, you haven't sat down to ask me questions about it. So that's probably why, you know, because it's that concept of like, let's stop selling our time and start selling our ideas and our knowledge and our passions in a way where we create something once and then we just sell it over and over and over and over again. So that's the only criticism, honestly, I've gotten from family has really just been like, I think what you're doing is a scam. I'm like, okay, well, it's not.
Like it's not a realistic path.
Right.
Like, great, you're working, but also this doesn't seem like a real thing. So find a real job kind of thing.
Exactly. That's the biggest one where I'm like, well, okay, just because that's what you had to do does not mean that's what I have to do. Like, yes, I can run a full business by posting reels and sending emails.
Right.
And it works. Like I spend an hour and a half every day and a half hour in the afternoon and sometimes throughout the day, right? So it's like, okay, 2.5 to 3 hours truly every day I spend on that business.
Right.
I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry that it didn't work like that for you. I'm sorry. Like I had a student who created a gluten-free sourdough starter kit, and she sold it for $20. I have another student who, unfortunately, she lost her husband to pancreatic cancer, and it happened really suddenly and very quickly. Same thing. And she's creating a kind of like a end of life checklist, which is like heartbreaking, but something that she needed.
Valuable, like the amount of things people probably don't know through stuff like that.
Don't think about, and just passwords and how to access this account and that account and just all these different things, you know. So she's taken her experience and her pain and she's using that now as a spreadsheet document that she's reselling over and over and over to help kind of take the place of what was her husband's income through selling
to benefit her life, but also to provide that like that support to other people and like turn that into something, shedding light to other people and helping other people through that. That's awesome.
Exactly. I think there's so many different ways to monetize the skills that you use every single day. Like we just found out my daughter has a dairy, gluten, and soy intolerance, which let me just tell you, is in about every single food item you can find on the shelf. And so I was just like, I wish someone had, here is a gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free recipes, and here are the food ingredients you need for that. I would have bought that thing so
Right.
fast,
Right. Right.
so fast. And now I'm like, no, I might create that myself because it's not out there and I need it. And
Right.
so if anyone knows of one, please let me know before I go create myself.
When I was
You know,
coaching one of my clients, she had said, you know, it's hard as your kids get older because like when they're little, we track every milestone and like their progress, their
hmm
development, all these things for like what's within appropriate reason. And then they get to be like a little bit older and we feel like they're misbehaving, they're this, they're that because we don't track that development anymore. And so I had actually
mm,
made a simple guide. It's helpful to have like that idea of like, yeah, your kid might be 13 and this might be the stuff that's coming up because
hmm
we assume that they've got it together as kids, especially as teens. And so
right.
that was something that she had brought up that was like, you know what? That's a great idea. And I completely agree. And that was like probably one of the first like digital products I had made. And
hmm
even now, as I'm homeschooling and using like school AI with like my school that I work for, I've been making
Yeah.
Minecraft homeschool lessons just to kind of put
Yes.
out there as added stuff just for ideas because there's so many ideas out there. And if you look at like Pinterest, right,
hmm
it blew up because people wanted to share their ideas. And I think this is, you know, no different. If you have those questions of like, how would I do this with kids at home? What would I
Right.
even do? You know, like there's so many options out there from network marketing, which of course, like you said, people believe they're like Ponzi schemes for this, anything in the digital space, the older generations have a hard time wrapping their head around. But there's
hmm
so many more people nowadays that get it
Right.
as the generations are like overturning and going
Well,
further
it's like if
down. Like,
you ever read a Kindle book, like if you have a
right.
Kindle app, like that is a digital product. And people
Yeah.
don't realize that. They think it's like this long, grandiose thing. And it's like, no, like if you've ever watched a YouTube video, that is a digital product that just
Right.
happens to be free. So it's
Free.
like we overcomplicate something that is truly just basic.
I was talking to my dad about this the other day, and you know, we were saying how like a lot of people don't believe these things work, like network marketing or like digital products, because so many people don't make it. But the reality is that really only the top 1% are the people that stayed consistent and didn't give up on themselves.
hmm
And it's like if you stayed with it, things
Right.
might have been different. But the reality is that the majority of the people who start these things, and I've been one of them, I've
hmm
started so many businesses because everything ADHD, I could make this a business, right? And then I stopped because I
Yep.
realized that's not what I want to do. But like
Right.
the majority of the people that start it, like 50% of them right off the bat drop off and then it trickles and it trickles. And so it's really, people look at it as being
hmm
a scam when the reality is it's just a lot of people don't take it as seriously because there's such a low risk that if
Right.
you only spend $100 to get started, they're like, I haven't lost that much. And they're willing to sit back and just
Yep.
take the loss and say,
Yep.
there's not enough discomfort and not enough skin in the game for them to keep it going. And
hmm
so it is a really interesting thing to look at because if you opened a business with $100,000, you'd be like, I have to make this money. Or if
Right.
you lose your job and you need to be
Right.
home with your kids and you're like, what do I do? You have that skin in the
You
game that
have to make
makes
it
you
work.
stay. You have to be willing to stick with it and find what like you said, to make the products what you love, because I didn't stick with the things I stuck
hmm
with or I was doing because it didn't feel aligned yet. It didn't feel like the things that I loved. So we talked about, you said you've got the baskets, you've got like these certain systems in
hmm
place, right? Would you say are your non-negotiables to keep that balance at home?
Question: Jesus, coffee, and grace. No, I think for me, really, just like getting my mind right, getting space for myself in the morning, whether that's 5 minutes on most days, or a half hour on good days. You know, just having time where it's like I have worship music on, I'll read my Bible for a few minutes, I'll journal, I'll pray. You know, spend time alone before it's needed everywhere, and
Mhm.
then you're like, oh my god, coffee pot always. I can only have a cup and a half, or else my heart's like, yeah. But it's just my little treat of like, okay, I make sure it's a good coffee, you know. But that's really for me, like that's like gets me excited to get up and go get my warm coffee and sit in my chair and start your business. And then I'd say the third one would be grace of like, okay, not every day I'm gonna feel creative. And with our cycles as women, we're not gonna feel creative. Like the hormone cycle and your creativity and the connectedness in that is like mind blowing.
Yeah.
So going with the flow there, everyone like, okay, not every day I'm going to feel like I can do this. Not every day I'm going to feel like I showed up well for my business or I showed up well for my kids or I, you know, I did a pre-made meal and that's okay. letting each day be what each day is, and knowing that that is not going to be the like summation of who I am as a mom or who I am as a business owner or who I am as a wife. And like, there's always tomorrow to try again. I try to do 1% better today than I did yesterday. Like, I am not in competition with anyone but myself. We're committed, like we're in this, right? Like, you are running a podcast and you are in it, and it's going to take off and it's going to succeed, because you're just not going to quit until it does. Like, I can just tell, like, you're like, no, I'm going to do this thing. And I think most stats show that majority of podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes. So your 10th episode is going to be a party, because you have done more than what 95 or whatever the statistic is of people who like, I'm gonna do a podcast, and they don't follow through, right? So that non-negotiable is like, burn the boats, back against the wall, figure it out. Know where the plastic and glass balls are, what can be like, what can wait until tomorrow. And you know what, if my bed doesn't get made today, like, oh well, I don't really care, you know. So it's like, find the balance, find the grace. And
I love that you said find, like, know where the plastic and the glass bottles are. I love that. I've never heard that before. I love that.
Really? Yeah. Like, just know, like, there are things that only you can do and you alone have to do, right? Like, you are your kid's mom. Like, no one else can do that. Someone else sure as heck can make their dinner, because you can just go drive to the store and pick it up. You know, like, we had In-N-Out for lunch, and like, what is it that only you can do?
Yeah, as my daughter's gotten older, we've implemented, like, I've been kind of teaching her more of that, like, entrepreneurial value-based stuff. So
that's awesome.
To make money, she will occasionally offer to make a dinner, and granted, it's like fish sticks, like, or like mac and cheese, but it's something she knows how to make. She's confident to do it. She can put the stuff in the oven. She knows how to take it out. She's 7. She's going to be 8.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, but she gets it, like, and usually I stand in there and watch her, but she knows how to do it. She's got the idea down. And so she can make $5. You know, we could have gone out to eat, but she can make $5, and she can choose to put the stuff on there, pop it in the oven, you know, and she's learning a skill, and she's learning to provide a value for someone to get that pay. So as they get older too, like, the seasons change, the dynamics change, and knowing where that lies and who can help with what is also really helpful. How has your journey with all of this, like, benefited your family's dynamic?
It has taken the financial stress of our marriage. I would say I'm not a marriage guru. I fully believe in marriage therapy. I think it's great. I think it's good before problems, during, and after them. But I will say, when we are not stressed about finances, things just seem to be a whole lot smoother for our family. And so for us, that, I would say, has been the biggest one. I mean, no, I'm not going to go spend a 10-day vacation to Tahiti. Like, that sounds phenomenal. That is not my season, girlfriend. That is not my season. I got babies at home, and those babies need very healthy, non-processed food. And so not having that financial stress on our marriage to be able to provide for that is hands down the game changer.
I can feel how proud you are of that. And I just love that. I love hearing, like, people, like, kind of gloat, like, be a little braggadocious. It's okay, because you should be. Not that you are. I'm just saying, I can hear, like, you are genuinely proud of what you built, and I just love that for you.
And it isn't even for that, but just to provide for our kids. And I think that's what all of us want as moms, is to provide for our kids, whether that's with our time and with our finances, and just to make sure they have everything that they could ever need or want, and more.
As we wrap up, I want to ask, what is the best advice you could give to a mom who's wanting to start, or feels maybe overwhelmed by starting their own business, and they're kind of in that place of, like, maybe even panic, like, they're just not sure what to do, and they just feel like it's this big thought, you know, and this big, like, turning point, crossroads. What advice would you give them for starting?
I would say, if it's okay with you, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to message me on Instagram. I would love to just talk with you. I'm sure you would, I've talked with them as well. Like, get out of your head and let someone into that space that's non-objective, that's going to just walk you through what it could look like, and try it. Take that very first step. Like, don't look at the end goal of, I have to build a $600,000 business or whatever it is. Like, what would be the first step in that? And then explore what that would look like. Because if it fails, you fail. That's okay. Like, failure is going to happen. Just try it. And if you're afraid that your family or your friends will find out, block them. They'll literally never know they're blocked.
Block buttons, yes.
Block them. No one will know. Like, don't let people's opinions of you and your business stop you from starting because they don't pay your bills. Talk to people that you are close with if you feel confident. If you're like, I want a total stranger's opinion, such as myself, to, like, hear your idea, shoot me a message on Instagram, say, hey, I heard you on the podcast, I want to talk. Great. Like, let's have a quick call, or we can just do DM voice notes or whatever. Because that's my favorite thing in business, is helping other women get started, helping other moms find find that financial freedom and find space to try something new and be creative. I honestly didn't think I was a creative person because I can't sing and I can't draw. And I was like, well, I'm not creative. Turns out there's a lot of ways to be creative.
It reminds me of, there's a module in my coaching where we talk about the power of play. And so often moms think that they're not playful. And I've started to I've started shifting my language and just saying fun with your kids, because we think of play as like, get down, play Barbies. You gotta, you gotta do it in a certain way. And the reality is, like, having fun in any capacity connects you with your kids. And so it's the same concept, like that perspective shift of like, it doesn't have to look the way you think it does. You don't have to be creative in this way. You could be creative in that way. Or, even if you're a technical person, maybe you don't think that you're creative because you're technical, but then it turns out that you're really good at being creative within the technical stuff. My dad and I have talked about that too, from like, it's so funny because him and I are totally like opposite. He's very mechanical, and I went to school for hair at one point. But when we have conversations, I'll say, oh, that's like when you do hair and this happens. And he's like, oh yeah. And we can compare literal hairstyling processes, or like coloring, to like mechanical stuff. And we had that conversation one day where he's like, no, I can be creative. He's like, I find different ways to make this work, within this mechanical setting. And so it's so interesting, like the perspectives and how those things change. So I really think it's definitely I say this all the time, have your own back, because like, you're the only person that's really going to believe in you. Like other people can believe in you, but no one's going to believe in you the way that you believe in you. So just getting out there and a willingness to try and have your own back, regardless of what other people are going to say. Sometimes your baby step is a podcast, because you have a huge goal of being like a massive group coaching empire. And you start with a podcast because it's free. And you can connect with other people and bring value in the free space, which helps you and them. So it can look a lot of different ways.
It can look a lot of different ways. There's a lot of ways to chase that dream, for sure.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
This has been such a wonderful conversation. I loved your story. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can actually find me on 2 different pages on Instagram at cat.belk, kat.belk, is one. And then if you're more interested in like the homeschooling stuff, it's at backyard_beginnings. And that's where I post all of homeschool ideas and guides and kits and all kinds of things. So cat.belk is where I really talk about running your own business, what that looks like, how you can get started. And then backyard beginnings is all homeschool. So find me there, message me either place. I would love to hear your thoughts on the podcast and something that you kind of got out of it, or struck a nerve, or something that you disagreed with. So I think it'd be a fun way to hear from listeners. So thanks for having me. It's been so fun.
Remember, you are powerful, you are worthy, you are valued, and you are loved. Keep pushing, keep loving, and most importantly, keep believing in your amazing ability to empower your legacy.